cold bit into my skin as I waited on the stone steps, my threadbare coat offering little protection against the autumn night. Around me, fog crept between ancient trees, obscuring the boundaries of the estate grounds. No stars tonight, no witnesses, just the howl of distant wolves and the thunderous beating of my heart. "You'll fetch a good price," Father had said, refusing to meet my eyes as he pushed me into the car. "Your golden hair alone will please him." His voice had cracked then, betraying a hint of remorse buried beneath layers of desperate necessity. The memory made me clutch my mother's silver pendant tighter, its worn edges digging into my palm. The last gift she'd given me before the illness took her. "Always remember your worth isn't measured by others, Elise," she'd whispered. "It comes from within." What worth remained in me now, sold to pay my family's debt to the Alpha of the Northern Territories? A man whispered about in hushed tones even among the bravest souls of our village. They said he'd killed his own father for power, that he ruled his pack with merciless precision, that those who entered his domain rarely left unchanged, if they left at all. The massive oak doors before me suddenly swung open, releasing a gust of warm air that carried the scent of wood smoke, leather, and something primal I couldn't name. A tall woman with severe features and silver-streaked hair assessed me with calculating eyes. "The payment," she said, extending her hand. I fumbled in my pocket for the sealed envelope Father had given me. Inside was the contract, signing away a year of my life in service to the Alpha, though everyone knew what service truly meant in these arrangements. The woman tore it open, scanned the contents, then nodded once. "Follow me," she commanded, turning sharply on her heel. "And do not touch anything." The interior of the mansion stretched before me like a cathedral to wealth and power. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Ancient tapestries depicting wolf hunts and battle scenes lined walls of polished stone. My worn boots sank into plush carpets as I followed the woman through corridors where centuries of history pressed down from every surface. "Your quarters are in the east wing," she explained without looking back. "You will be provided with appropriate clothing. Your old things will be burned." "Burned?" I repeated, my voice embarrassingly small in the cavernous space. "But I don't have anything else." She paused then, turning to face me with an expression hovering between pity and contempt. "You have nothing, because you are nothing here. Not yet. Remember that, human. In this house, you earn your place or you don't survive." Before I could respond, a door at the end of the hall crashed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot, freezing the blood in my veins. The woman's posture instantly changed, spine straightening, eyes downcast, hands clasped before her in deference. Why wasn't I informed immediately? A deep voice, controlled yet edged with barely contained fury, filled the space between us. "Alpha Rowan," the woman acknowledged. "The girl just arrived. I was bringing her to be prepared before—" "Leave us," he commanded. My escort retreated without another word. Abandoning me to face him alone, I kept my eyes fixed on the marble floor, terrified of what I might see if I looked up. Heavy footsteps approached, each one sending tremors through my body. When they stopped, I could feel his presence like a physical weight pressing against my skin. "Look at me." The command vibrated through my bones. I raised my eyes slowly, inch by painful inch, taking in first his towering height, then the breadth of his shoulders beneath a tailored black suit, and finally his face. The rumors hadn't prepared me, nothing could have. Alpha Rowan wasn't the monstrous beast I'd imagined, but something far more dangerous, a man of devastating beauty marked by cruelty. Sharp cheekbones framed eyes of such pale blue they appeared almost silver in the dim light. His dark hair, swept back from a severe brow, contrasted with skin that held the pallor of someone who commanded from shadows rather than daylight. A scar bisected his left eyebrow, trailing down his cheek like a tear frozen in place. When our eyes met, I felt the air leave my lungs as though physically extracted. "Your father spoke of your beauty," he said, circling me with predatory grace. "He failed to mention your fear," I swallowed hard. "I'm not afraid." A cold smile played at his lips. "Your heart betrays you. I can hear it racing, like prey." His fingers suddenly caught my chin, tilting my face to examine me from different angles. His touch burned against my skin, neither gentle nor particularly rough, just deliberately possessive. "Do you know why you're here, little dove?" I pulled away from his grasp. "To pay my father's debt." "No." His voice dropped lower. "You're here because I allowed it. Your father owes me much more than you could ever repay." Something in his tone made me shiver. "Then why accept the arrangement?" Alpha Rowan's eyes narrowed, surprise flashing across his features before the mask of indifference returned. "Curiosity, perhaps. It's not often someone offers their daughter to a monster. Is that what you are?" The question escaped before I could stop it. He leaned closer, his scent enveloping me. Pine and smoke and something dangerously intoxicating. "What do you think?" I thought of the stories, of the whispered warnings, of his reputation for breaking those who defied him. Yet standing before him, I felt something beyond fear. A strange, unwelcome fascination. "I think," I said carefully, "that monsters rarely see themselves as such." His eyes flashed, and for a terrible moment I thought I'd gone too far. Then he laughed, a sound so unexpected it sent goosebumps racing across my skin. "You'll sleep in my quarters tonight," he announced, turning abruptly away. Panic surged through me. "The agreement was for service in your household, not your—" "The agreement," he cut in, voice deadly quiet, "is whatever I deem it to be. You belong to me now, little dove. Every breath you take is by my permission." "I belong to no one," I whispered, my mother's words rising like a shield. He moved with inhuman speed, suddenly inches from my face, one hand braced against the wall behind me. "Everyone belongs to someone in this world. The sooner you accept that reality, the easier your time here will be." His proximity made it difficult to think clearly. Heat radiated from his body, and beneath the domineering alpha, I caught glimpses of something else. A loneliness that mirrored my own, carefully hidden behind walls of authority and control. "Follow me," he commanded, stepping back. "And understand this, there are rules in my home. Break them, and there are consequences." I followed him through a maze of corridors, each more opulent than the last. Members of his household, his pack, I realized, paused their activities to bow their heads as we passed. None would meet my eyes. None dared look directly at him. We ascended a grand staircase to the uppermost floor, where a set of double doors carved with snarling wolves marked what could only be his private chambers. Alpha Rowan pushed them open and gestured for me to enter. The room beyond was unexpected. Where I'd imagined dark opulence, I found instead a space of austere simplicity. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, its coverings the color of fresh snow. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the dense forest surrounding the estate. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across ancient wooden floors. Most surprising were the books, hundreds of them lining the walls in careful order, their leather spines cracked with use. Not the collection of someone who merely displayed wealth, but of someone who sought knowledge, who perhaps found solace in worlds beyond their own. "You seem surprised," he noted, watching me closely. I trailed off, unsure how to finish without offending. "Chains? Implements of torture?" His voice held a mocking edge. "How disappointing for you." I shook my head. I expected less evidence of humanity. Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, perhaps, or recognition. Before he could respond, a knock at the door broke the tension. A young woman entered carrying a tray of food, her eyes downcast. She placed it on a small table near the fire, curtsied deeply, and departed without a word. "Eat," Alpha Rowan instructed, moving to pour 2 glasses of deep red wine. "We have much to discuss regarding your position here." I approached the table cautiously, suddenly aware of the hollow ache in my stomach. The meal was simple, but elegant. Roasted meat, fresh bread, vegetables harvested from what must be the estate's gardens. I hadn't eaten properly in days. He placed a glass beside my plate. "Your father claims you possess unique abilities, that you can sense intentions, see beyond surfaces. Is this true?" I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Father had promised never to speak of that to anyone. "My intuition," as Mother had called it, had always been our family secret. My ability to sometimes feel others' emotions, to sense truth from lies. It had brought nothing but suspicion from villagers, who already distrusted our family's tenuous connection to the wolf packs. "I don't know what he told you," I answered carefully. "But people often exaggerate when desperate." Alpha Rowan studied me over the rim of his glass. "And is your father desperate, little dove?" The question felt like a trap, desperate enough to sell his daughter. His lips curved upward, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Not sold. Traded. There's a difference." Not to the one being traded. I expected anger, but instead, he looked almost approving. "Finish your meal. Then I'll show you something few humans have ever seen." I ate in silence, acutely aware of his gaze. When I finished, he rose and moved to a door I hadn't noticed, hidden within the bookshelves. "Come," he said, extending a hand. Against my better judgment, I followed, ignoring his offered hand. The hidden door opened onto a narrow staircase spiraling upward. Alpha Rowan led the way, his broad shoulders nearly touching the walls on either side. At the top, another door opened onto what appeared to be an observatory, a glass dome arched overhead, revealing a night sky now cleared of clouds. Stars blazed against the darkness, more than I'd ever seen from my village. The circular room contained a massive telescope and various astronomical instruments, all apparently well used. "My sanctuary," Alpha Rowan said quietly. "No one comes here without invitation." "Why show me?" He moved to the center of the room, moonlight casting his profile in silver. "To make something clear, in this house, there are places of beauty and places of darkness. Which you experience depends entirely on your choices." "My choices?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "I had no choice in coming here, but you have choices in how you stay." He turned to face me fully. "Your father owes me his life for breaking our territory treaty. I could have taken it. Instead, I accepted this arrangement. 1 year of your service, and his debt is cleared." "Service as what?" I finally asked the question that had haunted me since learning of the arrangement. Alpha Rowan's expression revealed nothing. "That remains to be determined. You've been brought here for a purpose, Elise. What that purpose becomes is partly up to you." The sound of my name on his lips startled me. I hadn't told him what I was called. "How did you—" "I know everything about your family," he interrupted. "Your father's desperate gambling. Your mother's illness and death 3 winters ago. Your sister's recent marriage to the son of a rival pack leader. A clever political move, though ultimately insufficient to protect your father from his poor decisions." Each word drove home the reality of my situation. He'd been watching us, waiting for the moment to collect on whatever debt father had incurred. "Why wait until now?" I asked. Something shifted in his eyes, a flash of emotion quickly concealed. "Because now is when I need you." Before I could question him further, a howl rose from the forest below, long, mournful, urgent. Alpha Rowan's head snapped toward the sound, his entire demeanor changing instantly from controlled civility to predatory alertness. "Stay here," he ordered, already moving toward the stairs. "Do not leave this tower until I return." Then he was gone, leaving me alone beneath the stars with more questions than answers. I moved to the window overlooking the forest and gasped as figures emerged from the trees, wolves larger than any natural animal, moving with purpose toward the mansion. As I watched, Alpha Rowan appeared on the grounds below, his powerful form illuminated by moonlight. Before my eyes he changed, clothes giving way to fur, human form surrendering to wolf. The transformation was both beautiful and terrifying, a fluid shift from man to beast that defied everything I thought I knew about shapeshifters. The resulting wolf was massive, black as midnight, with eyes that glowed silver even from this distance. He raised his head and answered the earlier call with a howl that shook the glass around me, a sound of command and power that seemed to reverberate through my very bones. And deep within me, something answered. I remained in the observatory until dawn broke, unable to tear myself from the window as the wolves gathered below. Their meeting appeared tense, tails stiff, ears alert, bodies arranged in clear hierarchies around Alpha Rowan's commanding form. Something was wrong. Even without understanding their communication, I could sense the anxiety rippling through their ranks. When the first light touched the horizon, they dispersed, melting back into the forest like shadows retreating from the sun. All except Alpha Rowan, who stood motionless at the forest's edge, his massive wolf form silhouetted against the rising light. Then he too disappeared among the trees. I curled into a chair, exhaustion finally claiming me. Dreams came in disjointed fragments. My mother's face as she placed the silver pendant around my neck, father's hands shaking as he signed the contract, a black wolf with silver eyes standing guard over my sleeping form. I woke with a jolt when the door to the observatory opened. It wasn't Alpha Rowan who entered, but the silver-haired woman from the previous evening. Her face betrayed nothing as she assessed my rumpled appearance. "I am Vera," she announced. "I manage the household. Alpha Rowan instructed me to bring you to your quarters." "Where is he?" I asked, rising from the chair on stiff legs. "Attending to pack business," she replied, her tone making it clear further questions would not be welcomed. "Follow me." We descended the spiral staircase and passed through Alpha Rowan's chambers, which looked untouched from the night before. The bed remained perfectly made, the fire reduced to embers. Vera led me through corridors now bright with morning light, revealing details I'd missed in the darkness. Intricate woodwork, ancient tapestries depicting wolf packs hunting beneath full moons, and occasional portraits of stern-faced men and women who shared a striking resemblance to Alpha Rowan. His ancestors, I realized. Generations of Alphas who had ruled these lands. "These will be your quarters," Vera said, opening a door to reveal a room both beautiful and clearly designed as a gilded cage. Sunlight streamed through tall windows that overlooked a walled garden. The space was elegantly appointed with a 4-poster bed, smaller than Alpha Rowan's, but no less luxurious. A writing desk, bookshelves, and a sitting area near a fireplace already crackling with fresh flames. A door at the far end presumably led to bathing facilities. "You'll find suitable clothing in the wardrobe," Vera continued, moving to draw back heavy curtains. "Your previous attire has been disposed of as instructed." My hand instinctively went to my throat, checking for my mother's pendant. Finding it still there brought a wave of relief. "You may keep the trinket," Vera noted, observing my reaction. Alpha Rowan specifically permitted it. The fact that he'd noticed the pendant and made a decision about its fate sent an uncomfortable shiver down my spine. How closely had he been watching me? "What am I expected to do here?" I asked, running my fingers along the polished surface of the writing desk. Vera's expression remained carefully neutral. "For today, you will rest and familiarize yourself with your quarters. Tomorrow, Alpha Rowan will determine your duties." "And if I refuse these duties?" Her eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, something like respect flickered in their depths. "Few refuse Alpha Rowan and live to speak of it. But you..." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "You are here under unusual circumstances. The normal rules may not apply." "What circumstances?" I pressed. "That is not for me to say." Vera moved toward the door. "Meals will be brought to you. Do not attempt to leave this room unescorted." The consequences would be severe. With that warning, she departed, the soft click of the lock confirming my status as prisoner rather than guest. I explored my surroundings more thoroughly, running my hands over fine fabrics and examining the books on the shelves. Collections of history, poetry, and folklore. Many focused on wolf legends from cultures around the world. In the wardrobe, I found dresses and other garments of quality I'd never possessed, silks, velvets, and fine wools in subdued colors. I chose the simplest option, a dark blue dress with minimal adornment, and took advantage of the attached bathroom to wash away the previous day's journey. The hot water was a luxury I hadn't experienced since before Mother's illness had drained our family's resources. I stayed beneath the stream until my skin flushed pink, trying to scrub away the feeling of being owned, of being traded like livestock. When I emerged, wrapped in a soft robe, I found a tray of food waiting on the small table near the fire, bread still warm from the oven, fruit, cheese, and a pot of fragrant tea. My stomach growled, reminding me how long it had been since the meal in Alpha Rowan's chambers. I ate slowly, savoring each bite while contemplating my situation. Father had sold me for 1 year of service. But what service? And why me specifically? Alpha Rowan had mentioned my abilities, the intuition that sometimes allowed me to sense emotions, to perceive intentions hidden beneath words. It wasn't magic, not really. Just a heightened awareness that had always seemed as natural to me as breathing. Mother had possessed it too, though she'd warned me never to speak of it outside our family. It makes people uncomfortable, she'd explained when I was young, to think you might see what they wish to hide. As I finished eating, I noticed a folded paper beneath the teapot. Opening it revealed elegant handwriting. Rest today. Tonight you will join me for dinner. We have matters to discuss. R. The note's brevity conveyed its own message. This was not a request but a command. I crumpled the paper in my fist, a small act of defiance in a situation where I held no power. Or did I? Alpha Rowan wanted something from me. Something specific that had led him to accept me as payment, instead of exacting whatever revenge he might have taken on Father. That gave me leverage, however slight. If I could discover what he needed, perhaps I could negotiate better terms for my stay, or even an early release. I spent the day examining my quarters inch by inch, searching for anything that might offer insight into my situation. The windows, though large, did not open. The garden below appeared enclosed by high stone walls. The door remained locked. I was, for all practical purposes, a prisoner in a beautiful cell. As afternoon faded to evening, a knock at the door preceded the entrance of 2 young women who introduced themselves as Maya and Lena. They carried garments and various implements that made their purpose clear. Alpha Rowan requests your presence at dinner, Maya explained, her dark eyes assessing me with undisguised curiosity. We're to help you prepare. I wanted to refuse, to assert some control over my situation. But what would that accomplish? Better to comply and gather information. The dress they'd brought was simpler than I expected, a deep forest green that complemented my fair hair and pale skin. They brushed my golden locks until they gleamed, arranging them in a style that appeared effortless, yet clearly required their skilled hands. Their conversation as they worked revealed small details about life in Alpha Rowan's household. He's been different lately, Lena whispered as she secured a pin. More restless. Maya shot her a warning glance. You shouldn't speak of the Alpha. She'll find out soon enough, Lena countered. Everyone's talking about the coming conflict. Conflict? I asked, meeting Lena's eyes in the mirror. She bit her lip, seeming to regret her loose tongue. It's not for us to discuss. Please forget I mentioned it. When they finished their work, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The dress accentuated curves I usually kept hidden beneath practical clothing. My skin appeared luminous in contrast with the dark fabric, and my light hair cascaded over one shoulder in soft waves. The silver pendant rested at my throat, a small reminder of who I truly was beneath this facade. He's waiting in the private dining room, Maya said, opening the door where Vera now stood. The silver-haired woman raised an eyebrow, a hint of approval in her expression. Follow me, she instructed, leading me through corridors I hadn't seen before. We descended a curved staircase to a part of the mansion that felt older, with stone walls and arched doorways that spoke of centuries past. Vera stopped before a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. Remember your place, she advised quietly. He may seem calm, but the wolf is always just beneath the surface. Before I could respond, she knocked and opened the door, announcing my presence before withdrawing, leaving me alone at the threshold of a room illuminated by dozens of candles. Alpha Rowan stood with his back to me, facing a roaring fire in a massive stone hearth. He'd changed from the formal attire of the previous evening into something that should have appeared more casual: dark trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to reveal powerful forearms. Yet even in simpler clothes, he exuded authority. Enter, he said without turning. I stepped into the room, noting the intimate setting. A small table set for 2, wine already poured, the warm glow of candlelight creating an atmosphere that felt dangerously close to romantic. "You clean up well, little dove," he observed, finally turning to face me. The compliment, delivered in his deep voice, sent an unwelcome warmth through my chest. Up close, in the flickering light, his features seemed less harsh than the night before. The scar along his cheek caught the shadows, giving him a vulnerable quality at odds with his imposing presence. "Thank you," I replied stiffly, though I had considerable help. His lips quirked in what might have been amusement. "Sit." He gestured to the table. "I imagine you have questions." I took the offered chair, watching as he moved with fluid grace to take his seat opposite me. "Several. Beginning with why I'm really here." Alpha Rowan studied me for a long moment, then reached for the wine. "Direct." "I appreciate that." He took a sip, those pale blue eyes never leaving my face. "Your father broke an ancient treaty by hunting on packlands. The traditional punishment is death." My breath caught. "And yet he lives. For now." Alpha Rowan set down his glass. "Because I found his particular situation useful to my purposes." "What purposes?" He ignored my question, instead nodding toward my untouched plate. "Eat. The food here is not poisoned, contrary to whatever village rumors might suggest." Reluctantly, I sampled the meal. Venison cooked to perfection, vegetables harvested from the estate gardens, bread still warm from the ovens. Despite my situation, hunger won out, and I found myself eating with greater enthusiasm than I'd intended. Alpha Rowan watched me with that same intensity from the night before. "Tell me about your gift." I set down my fork. "It's not a gift, just intuition." "Don't lie to me, Elise." His voice remained calm, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Your father was quite detailed about your abilities when bargaining for his life." Anger flared in my chest, at father for revealing my secret, at this man for using it to manipulate my family. "What exactly did he tell you? That you can sense emotions, that you know truth from lies? That you sometimes dream of events before they occur?" Alpha Rowan leaned forward slightly. "That you once saved your entire village by warning of a flood no one else saw coming?" I swallowed hard. That incident had occurred when I was just 14, a nightmare so vivid I'd woken screaming, convinced the river would break its banks before dawn. Father had rallied the villagers based solely on my terror. When the waters came, exactly as I'd dreamed, whispers had started. Some called it a blessing, others, witchcraft. "It doesn't always work," I said carefully. "And I can't control it. But it's real." It wasn't a question. I nodded once, seeing no point in further denial. Alpha Rowan's expression remained unreadable. "There's a traitor in my pack, someone working with our enemies to the south. I need to know who it is before they destroy everything I've built." Understanding dawned. "You want me to... what? Read their minds?" "I can't do that." "Not their minds, their intentions." He rose from the table, moving to refill his wine glass. "You'll join me when I meet with my inner circle. Observe them. Tell me what you feel. And if I refuse?" He turned, his expression hardening. "Then our arrangement changes. Your father's life is forfeit, and your service becomes less comfortable." The threat hung in the air between us. I thought of father. Weak and flawed, but still my blood. Of my younger sister, newly married and expecting her first child. They would suffer if I refused. "What happens after I identify this traitor for you?" I asked. "Justice happens," he replied coldly. "You mean execution?" Alpha Rowan set down his glass with deliberate care. "You disapprove of my methods without understanding the stakes. This isn't about politics, little dove. It's about survival. If the southern packs gain our territory, they won't rule as I do. They'll slaughter half my people and enslave the rest." "And what about me?" I pressed. "Once I've served your purpose, what becomes of our arrangement?" He moved toward me then, circling behind my chair until I could feel his breath against my hair. "That depends on how useful you prove to be." His proximity sent contradictory signals through my body, danger and attraction warring for dominance. I forced myself to remain still, as his fingers lightly brushed my shoulder. "There are worse fates than remaining here," he continued, his voice dropping lower. Under my protection. As what? I whispered. Your prisoner? Your spy? His hand moved to lift a strand of my hair, the gesture oddly gentle. That remains to be seen. The tension between us crackled like the fire in the hearth, dangerous, unpredictable, yet oddly mesmerizing. I pulled away from his touch, standing to put distance between us. When do you want me to begin? I asked, forcing steadiness into my voice. Alpha Rowan smiled, a predator's smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Tomorrow. I've called a council meeting to discuss the southern threat. You'll attend as my guest. The way he hesitated before the word guest suggested he'd considered another term entirely. I nodded my acceptance, knowing I had little choice. Until then, he continued, moving toward the door, you're free to explore the main floors of the house. Vera will show you what areas are permitted. This unexpected freedom caught me off guard. Why the sudden trust? Alpha Rowan paused, hand on the door. Not trust, little dove. Strategy. I want my people to see you, to wonder why you're here. The guilty ones will reveal themselves in how they react to your presence. You're using me as bait, I realized. His smile widened, showing teeth too sharp for a human mouth. Now you understand. With that, he opened the door, revealing Vera waiting in the hallway. Show her the grounds, he instructed the older woman. Answer her questions as you see fit. Then he was gone, leaving me to wonder what I'd gotten myself into, and whether I would survive the dangerous game he intended me to play. Vera's tour revealed a mansion far larger than I'd initially perceived. A sprawling complex of wings and courtyards that had expanded over centuries as each generation of alphas added their mark. We walked in silence through grand halls and shadowed corridors, past rooms filled with artifacts that spoke of the pack's ancient history. How long have you served him? I finally asked, as we entered a courtyard garden sheltered from the autumn chill by glass walls. Vera's silver-streaked hair caught the light as she turned. I served his father before him, and his grandfather before that. You're not like the others, I observed. Something about her energy felt different, more contained, less wild than the few pack members I'd glimpsed. Perceptive, she acknowledged with a slight nod. I am human, like you. One of the few in the household. This surprised me. Why would a human choose to serve werewolves? We all have our reasons. Her eyes held ancient sadness. Some of us were born here to human servants who came before. Others were brought in for specific skills. And some, she gave me a pointed look, some are traded for debts, as you were. Did Alpha Rowan's father treat humans as property too? Vera's expression hardened. You understand nothing of what you speak. The previous Alpha would have killed your father without hesitation and taken you regardless. Rowan offered a contract, terms, protection. Protection? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. I'm a prisoner here. For now, Vera agreed, gesturing for me to continue walking, but a living one, with potential for more. Be grateful for small mercies, girl. We passed through an archway into another courtyard, this one designed as a training ground. Several wolf shifters, all male, all powerfully built, practiced combat moves that blended human martial arts with something more primal. They paused at our entrance, heads turning in unison to assess the newcomer in their midst. The Alpha's guest, Vera announced, her tone making it clear that questions would not be welcomed. One man stepped forward, tall and broad-shouldered, with russet hair and amber eyes that assessed me with undisguised suspicion. Nathaniel, Vera acknowledged. The Alpha informed you of her arrival? He mentioned a human would be joining us, he replied, his deep voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. Not why. His gaze raked over me, lingering on my pendant, then on my face. Unlike the others, who quickly returned to their training, Nathaniel continued staring as though trying to solve a puzzle. The Alpha's reasons are his own, Vera replied smoothly. We're touring the grounds. Please continue. As we moved away, I felt Nathaniel's eyes following us. Who is he? I asked quietly. The Pax Beta, Vera explained. Second in command and Rowan's closest advisor since childhood. They were raised together. Does he always look at humans that way? A hint of amusement crossed Vera's features. Only the ones who appear in unusual circumstances. Nathaniel protects the Alpha, from enemies and from himself. From himself? I echoed. Vera didn't elaborate. Instead, leading me toward what appeared to be a library, the massive room stretched 2 stories high, with balconies running along the upper level and ladders providing access to the highest shelves. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and warming the rich wood paneling. This was built by Rowan's mother, Vera explained, her voice softening. She believed knowledge was as important as strength for those who would lead. I moved to the nearest shelf, running my fingers along leather-bound spines. Many of the titles were in languages I couldn't read, but others were familiar: histories, philosophical works, scientific texts. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. Vera's expression grew distant. Her death changed everything here. How did she die? I asked, sensing an important piece of the puzzle that was Alpha Rowan. That is not my story to tell. Vera straightened, professional mask slipping back into place. You should rest before tomorrow's council meeting. It will test your unique abilities. We returned to my quarters, where I found fresh clothing laid out, more practical than the elegant dinner dress, but still finer than anything I'd owned in my village. A light meal waited on the small table. Someone will fetch you in the morning, Vera said, preparing to leave. Be ready. Wait, I called as she reached the door. You've served 3 generations of Alphas. The traitor Rowan seeks. Do you have suspicions? Vera paused, conflict evident in her expression. We all have suspicions, girl. That's what makes this situation dangerous. No one knows whom to trust. After she departed, I ate sparingly, my appetite diminished by anxiety over the role I would play the following day. How could I identify a traitor among werewolves, beings whose emotions ran hotter and more complex than humans? What if I failed? Or worse, what if I succeeded and condemned someone to death? Sleep came fitfully, disturbed by dreams where I stood in a circle of wolves, their eyes glowing like coals in the darkness. At their center stood Alpha Rowan, both man and wolf simultaneously, watching me with those penetrating silver-blue eyes. Choose, he commanded in my dream. Choose who lives and who dies. I woke before dawn, perspiration cooling on my skin despite the chill in the room. The fire had died to embers, casting only the faintest glow across the wooden floor. Something felt wrong, a presence where there should be none. You talk in your sleep, came a voice from the shadows. I bolted upright, clutching the bed covers to my chest. Who's there? Alpha Rowan emerged from the darkness beside the window, his tall form silhouetted against the faint pre-dawn light. He wore the same casual attire from dinner, but his hair appeared disheveled, as though he'd been running his hands through it in agitation. How long have you been watching me? I demanded, heart hammering against my ribs. Long enough to know you're afraid, he replied, moving closer until he stood at the foot of my bed. You called my name. Heat rushed to my face. I was having a nightmare. About me? His voice held a strange note, something between satisfaction and concern. About what you're asking me to do, I corrected, gathering courage to meet his gaze directly. I'm not a weapon you can point at your enemies. He sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping slightly beneath his weight. The intimacy of the gesture, of his presence in my bedroom before dawn, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt an unwelcome flutter of something else entirely. No, he agreed quietly. You're more complex than that, which is precisely why I need you. Because I can sense emotions, Alpha Rowan studied me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Because you have nothing to gain by lying to me. Everyone else in that council room has ambitions, alliances, secrets. You alone have no stake in pack politics. Except my family's safety, I pointed out. Yes. He nodded slowly. A powerful motivator, isn't it? The need to protect those we love. Something in his tone made me look more closely at him. Beneath the authority and controlled power, I sensed bone-deep exhaustion and fear, not for himself, but for others. You truly believe your pack is in danger, I realized. I know it is. His hands clenched into fists on his lap. 3 of my wolves have been killed in the past month. sentries, guarding our borders. Their throats torn out, bodies displayed where we would find them. Horror washed through me. The southern packs? They deny involvement, but the attacks continue, each one coming closer to the heart of our territory. He looked away, toward the window where the sky was beginning to lighten. And each time, our patrols find nothing, as though the killers know exactly when and where to strike, when to disappear. Understanding dawned. Someone's telling them your patrol schedules, your defensive positions. Alpha Rowan's eyes met mine, approval flashing in their depths. Yes. And you've narrowed it down to your council members? They're the only ones with access to that information. He stood, moving to stoke the dying fire. Flames leapt to new life, casting his profile in sharp relief. 12 wolves I've trusted with my life. One is a traitor. The weight of what he was asking settled more heavily on my shoulders. These weren't strangers, but his inner circle. Wolves he'd believed loyal. What if I can't tell? I asked. What if my ability doesn't work the way you hope? He turned from the fire, flames dancing behind him. Then I'll find another way. But I believe you can do this, Elise. The sound of my name on his lips still startled me. Not little dove or human, but my actual name, spoken with a certainty that made it sound like an incantation. Why did you really come here tonight? I asked. A shadow passed across his features. To see if you were planning to escape. And if I was, I would stop you. The words held no menace, just simple fact. I pushed the covers aside and stood, forcing myself not to shrink under his gaze. The simple nightgown I wore offered little protection from the chill or from his scrutiny. I gave my word, I said, lifting my chin. 1 year of service to clear my father's debt. I won't run. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reluctant respect. Your loyalty to a father who sold you is unexpected. It's not loyalty to him, I corrected. It's loyalty to myself, to who I choose to be, regardless of how others treat me. Alpha Rowan moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the scent of pine and night air that clung to him. And who do you choose to be, Elise? Someone who keeps her promises, I answered. Someone who protects the innocent. Beyond that, I shrugged. I'm still deciding. His eyes tracked the movement, lingering on the silver pendant at my throat. Without warning, his hand rose to touch it, fingers brushing against my collarbone in the process. The contact sent electricity racing across my skin. Your mother's? He asked softly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. His proximity scrambled my thoughts in ways I didn't want to examine. She gave it to you before she died, he continued, still touching the pendant but watching my face. To remind you of your worth. Shock raced through me. How could you possibly know that? His expression remained inscrutable. You told me. In your sleep. Before I could respond, he stepped away, moving toward the door. Rest while you can. I'll send Vera for you at 9. The council begins at 10. Wait, I called as his hand touched the doorknob. There's something you're not telling me. Alpha Rowan paused, his back to me. There are many things I'm not telling you, little dove. Most for your protection. You don't trust me, I observed. He looked over his shoulder, a faint smile playing at his lips. I don't trust anyone, but I'm beginning to think I could make an exception in your case. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving me alone with questions multiplying like shadows in my mind. The council chamber intimidated by design. Situated in the oldest part of the mansion, its stone walls were adorned with ancient weapons and the pelts of massive wolves, ancestors, I realized with a shiver, preserved as reminders of the pack's lineage. 12 high-backed chairs formed a semicircle around a central position clearly meant for the Alpha. Behind this arrangement stood a smaller chair, slightly elevated on a platform, my assigned post as observer. Vera had dressed me simply but elegantly in a gown of deep burgundy that complemented my fair coloring without drawing undue attention. You should blend into the background, she'd explained. Let them forget you're watching. Now I sat still and silent as council members filed in, each casting curious glances my way before taking their appointed seats. Nathaniel, the beta, entered last before Alpha Rowan, positioning himself at the right hand of the Alpha's empty chair. His amber eyes met mine briefly, a question in their depths. When Alpha Rowan entered, the energy in the room shifted palpably. Everyone stood until he took his seat, the gesture so automatic it spoke of years of ingrained respect, or fear. He wore formal attire today, black on black with silver accents that matched his eyes. The scar on his face seemed more pronounced in the chamber's harsh lighting. "My wolves," he greeted them, his deep voice filling the space. "I've called you here to address the continuing threat from the south, but first..." His gaze swept the room. "Allow me to introduce Elise. She will be observing our council as my guest." Murmurs rippled through the gathered werewolves. One woman with copper hair and calculating eyes spoke up. "What purpose does a human serve in pack deliberations, Alpha?" "Perspective, Lydia," Alpha Rowan replied smoothly. "Sometimes we become too insular in our thinking. Elise offers fresh eyes." The explanation satisfied no one, but none dared question further. I forced my expression to remain neutral as I studied each council member in turn, opening my senses to the emotional currents flowing through the room. Most radiated the expected mixture of curiosity and suspicion toward me. Beneath that ran deeper concerns: fear for their territory, anger at the southern aggressors, determination to protect what was theirs. Normal reactions to their circumstances. Alpha Rowan began the formal business, discussing patrol reports and boundary violations. I listened with half an ear, focusing instead on the subtle shifts in energy as different topics arose. When he mentioned the 3 murdered sentries, grief swept through the room. Genuine from most, but from one corner came something different. Something that felt like satisfaction quickly masked by manufactured sorrow. My eyes tracked to the source, a lean man with salt and pepper hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He sat perfectly still, his face a mask of appropriate concern, but his emotional signature rang false. "Counselor Vincent," Alpha Rowan was saying, "your border patrols reported no unusual activity." "Nothing, Alpha," the man responded smoothly. "We've doubled our presence as instructed, but the southern borders remain quiet." Lie. The certainty hit me with such force I nearly gasped. Not the words themselves, perhaps, but the intent behind them. This man, Vincent, knew more than he was saying. I shifted my gaze to Alpha Rowan, wondering if he could sense the deception. His focus remained on the council business, but something in his posture suggested heightened awareness, like a predator scenting prey. The meeting continued, touching on food stores for the coming winter, territory disputes with neighboring packs, and the integration of recently turned wolves. Throughout it all, I monitored the emotional undercurrents, noting who spoke with genuine concern for the pack and who seemed to have private agendas. Vincent's reactions particularly troubled me. Each time the southern threat was mentioned, his emotional response jarred. First satisfaction, then manufactured concern, and beneath it all, a cold calculation that made my skin crawl. As the council drew to a close, Alpha Rowan addressed each member individually, assigning tasks for the coming weeks. To Vincent, he gave responsibility for coordinating with allied packs to the east, a position that would take him away from the southern borders. Vincent's flash of anger at this assignment confirmed my suspicions. It was brief, quickly masked, but unmistakable. When the council members had been dismissed, only Nathaniel remained with Alpha Rowan and myself. The beta approached me, curiosity evident in his expression. "So, human," he said, his accent more pronounced up close. "What did you see with those special eyes of yours?" I glanced at Alpha Rowan, who nodded once, permission to speak freely. "Not all of your council members have the pack's best interests at heart," I said carefully. Nathaniel's eyebrows rose. "You determined this in one meeting?" "She has a gift for reading people," Alpha Rowan interceded, moving to stand beside me. "It's why she's here. And who should we be concerned about according to your gift?" Nathaniel asked, skepticism evident in his tone. I met his gaze directly. "The one called Vincent feels wrong. His emotions don't match his words or actions. Nathaniel stiffened, glancing at Alpha Rowan. Vincent has served the pack for 20 years. He was your father's most trusted advisor, which would give him ample opportunity to develop grievances, Alpha Rowan pointed out, his expression hardening, and to make connections with our enemies. This is dangerous ground, Rowan, Nathaniel warned, accusing a senior council member based on a human's feelings. I'm not saying he's definitely the traitor, I interjected, only that his emotional responses were inconsistent with his words and actions. He knows something he's not sharing. Alpha Rowan's hand came to rest lightly on my shoulder, the gesture both possessive and protective. Have Vincent watched, he instructed Nathaniel, discreetly. If Elise is right, he'll make a move soon, especially after being assigned away from the southern border. Nathaniel's expression remained doubtful, but he nodded. As you command, Alpha. After he departed, Alpha Rowan turned to me, those penetrating eyes searching my face. You're certain about Vincent? I'm certain he's hiding something, I clarified. Whether that makes him your traitor, I need more time with him to be sure. Alpha Rowan nodded slowly. Then you shall have it. Tonight, there's a gathering, a celebration of the autumn equinox. All council members will attend. His hand moved from my shoulder to my cheek, the touch surprisingly gentle. You'll attend as my personal guest. The implication hung in the air between us. If I appeared as his chosen companion, it would send a message to the entire pack, one that might provoke the traitor into revealing themselves. You want them to think I couldn't finish the sentence. Mine, he supplied, his voice dropping to a register that sent shivers down my spine. Yes, it will force our traitor's hand, one way or another. I should have objected, should have reminded him that I was here under duress, not by choice. Instead, I found myself nodding, a strange anticipation building in my chest at the thought of spending more time in his presence. I'll need to get ready then, I said, trying to sound practical rather than affected by his proximity. Alpha Rowan smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something dangerously appealing. Vera will see to it. Be prepared for questions, little dove. And for resentment. Not everyone will welcome a human at the Alpha's side. As I turned to go, his voice stopped me at the door. Elise. The sound of my name in his mouth still sent warmth spreading through my veins. Thank you for your honesty today. It's refreshing. I glanced back at him, this powerful, dangerous man who held my family's fate in his hands, who might also be holding something deeper, something more personal, that he wasn't ready to reveal. Don't thank me yet, I warned. The truth is rarely comfortable, Alpha Rowan. Even when it's what we seek. His expression grew thoughtful, perhaps especially then. As Vera escorted me back to my quarters, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped deeper into a game whose rules I didn't fully understand, with stakes higher than I could possibly imagine. The celebration took place in the Great Hall, a cavernous space transformed by hundreds of candles, autumn foliage, and ancient symbols painted in what looked disturbingly like blood on the stone walls. Pack members filled the room, their energy crackling with a wild intensity that made the hair on my arms stand on end. Many had partially shifted, their eyes glowing amber or gold, canines elongated, movements more fluid than human. I stood at the entrance, momentarily frozen by the sight. Vera had dressed me in a gown the color of midnight, adorned with silver embroidery that echoed the phases of the moon. My hair had been arranged in an intricate style, woven with small white flowers that Vera called wolf's blessing. They protect humans who walk among wolves, she'd explained, her fingers deftly working through my golden locks. Or so the old stories claim. Now, facing the gathered pack, I desperately hoped those stories were true. There you are! Alpha Rowan's voice behind me sent a jolt down my spine. I turned to find him dressed in ceremonial attire, black and silver like mine, but with symbols of authority worked into the fabric. The effect was both regal and primal, emphasizing the duality of his nature. Man and wolf, civilized and wild. You look... His eyes tracked over me, lingering in ways that made my pulse quicken. Perfect. Before I could respond, he offered his arm. Shall we make an entrance, little dove? Taking his arm felt like a commitment, To what, I wasn't entirely sure, but I slipped my hand into the crook of his elbow, acutely aware of the solid strength beneath the fine fabric. A hush fell over the gathering as we entered together. Every head turned, every eye assessed. I sensed shock, curiosity, and in some cases, outright hostility radiating from the assembled werewolves' smile. Alpha Rowan murmured near my ear, "They're less likely to eat you if they think I'd be displeased. That's not funny," I whispered back. His low chuckle vibrated through me. "It wasn't meant to be. Keep Vincent in your sights. He'll be watching us closely." Sure enough, I spotted the salt and pepper-haired counselor near a table laden with food, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes tracking our every move. Beside him stood the copper-haired woman from the council, Lydia, her mouth set in a thin line of disapproval. Alpha Rowan led me through the crowd, introducing me to key pack members with a possessive hand at the small of my back. Each introduction reinforced the message. This human stands under my protection. This human is mine. The reactions varied from cautious acceptance to barely concealed contempt. One woman, tall, statuesque, with eyes like molten gold, practically snarled when Rowan presented me. "Serena is one of our strongest fighters," he explained as we moved away. "She also believed she would be my mate after I took leadership. And will she be?" I asked, surprised by the twist of something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy in my stomach. Alpha Rowan's eyes met mine, something dangerous flickering in their depths. "That's not her decision to make, or mine, entirely." Before I could question him further, music started, primal drums and wailing strings that spoke to something ancient in the blood. Pack members formed a circle in the center of the hall, movements becoming more wolf-like as the rhythm intensified. "They're preparing for the hunt," Alpha Rowan explained, his voice low near my ear. "An equinox tradition. At midnight, we honor our wolf nature under the balanced night. You'll be joining them?" I couldn't keep the apprehension from my voice. His fingers tightened slightly on my waist. "Later. First, we have a traitor to flush out." He guided me toward where Vincent and Lydia stood in conversation, their heads bent close together. They straightened as we approached, both offering respectful nods to their alpha. "Counselor Vincent," Alpha Rowan greeted him. "I trust your preparations for the Eastern diplomatic mission are underway?" Vincent's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, Alpha. Though I confess, I'm curious why you've reassigned me from the Southern Border Patrol I've overseen for a decade." "Fresh eyes," Alpha Rowan replied smoothly, echoing his explanation for my presence at the council. "Sometimes we become too familiar with our territories, miss patterns." Vincent's gaze shifted to me, assessment clear in his expression. "And is that why your guest attended our council meeting? To provide these fresh eyes?" "Among other talents," Alpha Rowan replied, his arm slipping possessively around my waist. The implication hung in the air, deliberately provocative. I felt Vincent's emotional response like a slap. Outrage, disgust, and beneath it all, calculation. How fortunate to find such talents in a human, Lydia interjected, her tone making the word talents sound obscene, particularly one from a family known to poach on packlands. I stiffened, but Alpha Rowan's fingers pressed a warning against my side. "Let them talk. Watch their reactions. My father's actions aren't mine," I said carefully. "I'm here to make amends. Through service to the Alpha personally?" Vincent asked, the double meaning unmistakable. "How dedicated?" Alpha Rowan's growl was too low for human ears, but I felt it vibrate through his chest where our bodies touched. "Careful, Vincent. Your tone borders on disrespect." The counselor immediately backpedaled, lowering his eyes. No disrespect intended, Alpha, merely surprise at this unexpected development. As they spoke, I focused on Vincent's emotional state, sifting through the surface reactions to what lay beneath. There, a flicker of fear when the southern border was mentioned. And something else, anticipation, as though he were waiting for something. A commotion at the entrance drew our attention. Nathaniel entered, his expression grim, accompanied by two burly wolves half-dragging a third between them. The captive, a young man barely out of his teens, bore fresh wounds across his face and arms, Alpha Rowan released me, moving swiftly to intercept them. "What is this?" "Found him crossing our southern border," Nathaniel explained, loud enough for nearby pack members to hear. "Carrying this." He held up a folded paper sealed with wax. Even from a distance, I could see the impression in the seal, a wolf's head, with crossed daggers beneath. "The Southern Alpha's mark," Rowan growled, taking the paper. "Who sent you?" The young wolf spat blood onto the floor. "Go to hell." Alpha Rowan's hand shot out, gripping the messenger's throat with enough force to make him gasp. "You entered my territory carrying enemy communications. Your life is forfeit unless you give me a reason to spare it." "Rowan," I called, moving forward without thinking. "Wait." The entire hall fell silent at my intervention. Alpha Rowan turned slowly, his expression dangerous. For interrupting him publicly, challenging his authority before his pack, I'd crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. But something about this situation felt wrong. Engineered somehow. I'd followed my intuition this far. I couldn't stop now. "You should hear what he has to say," I continued, holding Rowan's gaze. Before deciding his fate, a tense moment passed where I thought he might reject my suggestion outright. Then, to my surprise, he released the young wolf's throat. "Speak," he commanded, quickly. The messenger coughed, rubbing his neck. "I was told to ensure this was delivered tonight, during your celebration." His eyes darted around the hall to make sure everyone saw it. Alpha Rowan broke the seal, unfolding the paper. As he read, his expression darkened dangerously, the wolf within him pushing closer to the surface. Without a word, he handed the message to Nathaniel, who scanned it and growled low in his throat. "What does it say?" someone called from the crowd. Nathaniel looked to Rowan, who nodded once. "The Southern Alpha claims one of our own has pledged allegiance to him," Nathaniel announced, his voice carrying through the hall. "That this traitor has provided information leading to the deaths of our 3 sentries, with promises of more to come. He demands we surrender our western hunting grounds, or he will expose the traitor's identity and watch us tear ourselves apart with suspicion." Murmurs erupted throughout the gathering. I watched the council members' reactions carefully, particularly Vincent's. His face showed appropriate shock and outrage, but beneath satisfaction, relief, the emotions were confusing, contradictory. Then I realized he was pleased by the letter itself, not its contents, as though its delivery were expected, planned. "This is clearly a ploy to divide us," Vincent spoke up, his voice carrying authority. "The southern packs have always envied our territory. They seek to make us doubt one another when we should be standing united." Several pack members voiced agreement. I moved closer to Alpha Rowan, keeping my voice low. "Something's not right. Vincent expected this letter, but he's not afraid of being exposed." Alpha Rowan's eyes met mine, a silent question. "It's too convenient," I continued. "A public threat designed to create exactly this reaction. Unity against a common enemy. What if that's the goal?" Understanding dawned in his expression. In one fluid motion, he turned to address the messenger. "Who gave you this letter to deliver?" The young wolf hesitated. "I was told to say it came from the Southern Alpha." "But it didn't," I stated, certainty flowing through me. "Did it?" The messenger's eyes darted nervously to Vincent, then back to the floor. That glance, brief but unmistakable, was all the confirmation we needed. Alpha Rowan moved with blinding speed, crossing the space between himself and Vincent in a heartbeat. Before the counselor could react, Rowan had him pinned against the wall, forearm pressed against his throat. "An interesting strategy," Rowan growled. "Create an external threat to unify the pack against a common enemy. Position yourself as a voice of reason." "Was killing our sentries part of your plan from the beginning, or merely a convenient addition?" Vincent's mask of loyal counselor shattered. "You've become weak," he spat, eyes flashing yellow with partial transformation. "Your father would never have allowed humans to walk among us as equals, would never have brought one into our council chambers." "My father ruled by fear," Rowan replied, increasing the pressure on Vincent's throat. "I chose a different path. A path to destruction." Vincent's voice rose, addressing the gathered pack members rather than just Rowan. He would have us integrate with humans, weaken our bloodlines, abandon our ways. I acted to preserve what we are. I scanned the crowd, gauging reactions. While some seemed swayed by Vincent's words, most appeared horrified by his confession. The 3 murdered sentries had been their packmates, their friends. His justification for betrayal rang hollow. "Were you working with the Southern Alpha?" Nathaniel demanded, moving to flank Rowan. Vincent laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "That fool? He was a means to an end. I fed him enough information to keep him interested, to make him believe I would help him take our territory. In truth, I was positioning myself to take control of both packs once you were eliminated." Alpha Rowan's expression hardened further. "And Lydia? Was she part of your plan?" All eyes turned to the copper-haired counselor, who had gone deathly pale. "I didn't know about the murders," she insisted, backing away. "Vincent said we needed a stronger leader, someone who would keep our bloodlines pure. I agreed with his principles, but not his methods. Yet you said nothing when our packmates died," Nathaniel growled. The gathering had transformed from celebration to tribunal. Pack members closed in around us, their expressions ranging from grief to rage as the betrayal sank in. "By pack law, the punishment for treason is death," Alpha Rowan stated, his voice carrying throughout the hall. "Do any challenge this?" Silence fell. Not even Lydia spoke in Vincent's defense. "Tonight is the equinox hunt," Rowan continued, releasing Vincent into the custody of 2 large wolves who immediately restrained him. "Traditionally, we hunt as a pack. Tonight, we hunt a traitor." The implications sent a chill through me. Vincent would be given a head start, then pursued by the entire pack in wolf form. His chances of survival were virtually non-existent. As preparations for this grim hunt began, Alpha Rowan turned to me. "You should return to your quarters. This isn't something you need to witness." Part of me wanted to agree, to retreat from the primal violence about to unfold, but I'd played a role in exposing Vincent. I couldn't hide from the consequences. "I'll stay," I said quietly. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Very well, but remain here in the hall. The forest isn't safe for humans tonight." An hour later, most of the pack had departed for the hunt, leaving only the elderly, the very young, and a few human servants in the great hall. I stood by a window overlooking the forest, watching as clouds parted to reveal a perfect half-moon, balanced between waxing and waning on this equinox night. "He listens to you," came Vera's voice behind me. "That's rarer than you might imagine." I turned to find the silver-haired woman studying me with newfound interest. "I just said what needed to be said," I replied. Vera smiled slightly. "Many have tried that approach with Rowan. Few have succeeded as you did tonight." "He's not what I expected," I admitted. "When my father told me I was being sent here, to the Alpha..." "You expected a monster," Vera finished for me. "Most do. Rowan cultivates that image deliberately. It's easier to lead through fear than through trust. Yet he trusted me," I mused. "A human he'd never met, with information vital to his pack's survival. Perhaps he sensed something in you worth trusting." Vera's eyes dropped to the pendant at my throat. "Your mother's gift has protected you well." I touched the silver disc reflexively. "It's just a necklace, is it?" Vera reached out, her fingers hovering near but not touching the pendant. "Look closer, child, at the symbol etched into the silver." I lifted the disc, examining the design I'd always taken for decorative swirls. In the candlelight, I could suddenly see what I'd missed, a stylized wolf curled protectively around a human figure. "This symbol belongs to an ancient order," Vera explained. "Humans who served as bridges between our kinds, empaths with the ability to sense truth, to facilitate understanding. They were called the Venetrix, the Huntresses." And the revelation stole my breath. My mother never said. Perhaps she didn't know. The knowledge was lost generations ago when humans turned against werewolves, hunting us nearly to extinction. Vera's expression grew distant. A few families maintained the bloodline, often unaware of their heritage. The pieces suddenly aligned, my inexplicable intuition, my ability to sense emotions, my mother's identical gift. Even my father's desperate gambit to trade me to Alpha Rowan now made a terrible kind of sense. He hadn't simply been paying a debt, he'd been returning me to a world my bloodline had once bridged. Rowan knew, I realized. That's why he accepted me as payment instead of killing my father. Vera nodded slowly. He suspected. Your pendant confirmed it. The Alpha has been searching for a Venetrix since he took leadership 5 years ago. Why? Ask him yourself, Vera replied, nodding toward the entrance where Alpha Rowan had just returned. He'd shifted back to human form and dressed hastily in simple black clothing. Blood, Vincent's presumably, spattered his hands and face, despite the violence evident in his appearance. His eyes, when they found me, held something unexpected, vulnerability. I moved toward him without conscious thought, drawn by the raw emotion emanating from him in waves. Relief, exhaustion, grief. It's done, he said simply. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but sincere. Alpha Rowan studied me, his head tilting slightly. Are you? He betrayed his pack, caused the deaths of 3 wolves under my protection. I'm not sorry he's been punished, I clarified. I'm sorry you had to be the one to carry out that punishment. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, followed by a softening around his eyes. Walk with me? I nodded, following as he led me from the great hall into the relative quiet of a small courtyard. The night air carried the scent of autumn leaves and distant wood smoke. Above us, the half-moon illuminated the space in gentle silver light. You saved lives tonight, Alpha Rowan said, breaking the silence. Without your gift, Vincent's plan might have succeeded. More of my wolves would have died. I only did what you brought me here to do, I reminded him. No. He turned to face me fully. You did far more. You challenged me publicly when you believed I was making a mistake. Few would dare that, even among my inner circle. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how close we stood. I suppose I'm not very good at knowing my place. Your place, he repeated, a smile touching his lips. Vera told you, didn't she, about what you are? The Venetrix, I confirmed, though I still don't fully understand what it means. Alpha Rowan reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wished. When I remained still, his fingers traced the outline of my pendant. It means you belong to neither world fully, yet can walk in both, he explained, his voice low and intense. Historically, the Venetrix served as advisors to Alpha Wolves. Their ability to sense truth made them invaluable for maintaining pack harmony, mediating disputes, identifying threats. Is that why you really brought me here, to serve as your advisor? His hand moved from my pendant to cup my cheek, the gesture surprisingly gentle from someone I'd just watched deliver judgment with lethal efficiency. Initially, yes, he admitted. When I learned what your family was, what you might be, I saw an opportunity to protect my pack. The arrangement with your father provided a convenient way to bring you here. And now? I whispered, unable to look away from the intensity in his gaze. Now I find myself conflicted. His thumb brushed lightly across my cheekbone. The Venetrix and the Alpha have another traditional role. In the old stories, they were often more than advisor and leader. They were partners, I finished, the knowledge rising from somewhere deep within me. Equals. His eyes darkened. Yes. The air between us charged with unspoken possibility. I should have been repulsed by what he'd done tonight, by the blood still staining his hands. Instead, I found myself understanding it. The burden of leadership, the necessity of swift justice to protect those under his care. The traditional arrangement was for 1 year, he continued, a trial period to determine compatibility. After that, the Venetrix could choose to stay or go, I said, the information surfacing like memories I hadn't known I possessed. Their choice, freely made. Alpha Rowan nodded slowly. And what would your choice be, Elise? If it were truly yours to make? The question hung between us, weighted with implications. 24 hours ago, I would have answered without hesitation. I would return to my village, to the life I'd known. But now, understanding more about who I was, about my heritage and purpose, I wasn't so certain. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. This world is still new to me. Rather than disappointment, relief flickered across his features. Then I propose we honor the traditional arrangement. 1 year. You serve as my advisor, helping to identify threats to the pack, mediating disputes with your gift. In return, I provide protection for your family and teachings about your heritage. And after the year, I pressed. His hand dropped from my face, though he remained close. After the year, you choose. Stay or go. No consequences either way. The offer seemed too good to be true. Why would you agree to that? Why give me that power? Alpha Rowan's expression grew serious. Because a true partnership can't exist without choice, Elise. I've ruled through fear because I thought it necessary. But I've seen another way tonight, through your courage, your compassion, your willingness to speak truth even when dangerous. He took a step back, creating space between us. 1 year. As equals, not as master and servant. Will you accept these terms? In that moment, looking at this complex man, powerful yet vulnerable, dangerous yet capable of gentleness, I made my decision. I accept, I said, extending my hand to formalize our agreement. Instead of shaking it, Alpha Rowan lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against my knuckles. The gesture sent heat racing through my veins. Then welcome truly to my home, Venetrix, he murmured against my skin. As we stood together beneath the equinox moon, I felt something shift inside me. The first tendrils of belonging taking root in soil I'd never expected to claim as my own. Not Stockholm Syndrome, not capitulation to captivity, but recognition of a purpose that resonated with my very being. I had been sold to a cruel alpha by my family, but after one night, a night of truth, danger, and unexpected connection, neither of us could let go of the possibility we represented together. The year ahead would reveal whether that possibility blossomed into something lasting or withered under the weight of our differences. For now, it was enough to stand beside him, neither predator nor prey, but something new entirely, something with the power to change both our worlds.